Carlos Oswita thread incoming. Whoa. We may be seeing yet another Donald Trump head fake. This is what Trump tweeted. The United States of America will be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. There's something crucial in that tweet that I just discovered. Let's go to Attorney General William Barr's statement. From justice.gov, Attorney General William P. Barr's statement on riots and domestic terrorism. It ends with this. It is the responsibility of state and local leaders to ensure that adequate law enforcement resources, including the National Guard where necessary, are deployed on the streets to reestablish law and order. We saw this finally happen in Minneapolis last night, and it worked. Federal law enforcement actions will be directed at apprehending and charging the violent radical agitators who have hijacked peaceful protest and are engaged in violations of federal law. To identify criminal organizers and instigators and to coordinate federal resources with our state and local partners, federal law enforcement is using our existing network of 56 regional FBI Joint Terrorism Task Forces, JTTF. The violence instigated and carried out by Antifa and other similar groups in connection with the rioting is domestic terrorism and will be treated accordingly. Back to Carlos. Guess what? There's no law against being a domestic terrorist. Congress is reluctant to make such laws because of First Amendment issues. The United States Code defines international and domestic terrorism as such. 1. The term international terrorism means activities that A. involve violent acts or acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state, or that would be a criminal violation if committed within the jurisdiction of the United States or of any state. B. appear to be intended 1. to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. 2. to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. Or 3. to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. And finally, C. occur primarily outside the territorial jurisdiction of the United States or transcend national boundaries in terms of the means by which they are accomplished, the persons they appear intended to intimidate or coerce, or the locale in which their perpetrators operate or seek asylum. 5. The term domestic terrorism means activities that A. involve acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state. B. appear to be intended 1. to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. 2. to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. Or 3. to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. And C. occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Back to Carlos. There's actually no statute for which you can charge someone for being a domestic terrorist. The Patriot Act allows surveillance, asset seizure, and search warrants issued for domestic terrorists, but again, there's no charge of domestic terrorism. Adam Schiff wrote a domestic terrorism bill, but you can bet that he'll pull it now. So let's go back to Trump's tweet. The United States of America will be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Did you see the word domestic in there? No? You most surely don't. And don't call me Shirley. What if the 4-year investigation determined that Antifa is an international terrorist organization? Barr said that the 56 FBI Joint Terrorism Task Forces are now working with the counterterrorism departments of state and local law enforcement. That's pretty damn big. See, Trump understands that making Antifa domestic terrorists leaves too much in the hands of insane Democrats. The Portland City Council pulled their cops from the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Today, Portland cops can only cooperate if the chief of police approves. There's no way Portland would agree to Antifa being designated domestic terrorists. But if Antifa are international terrorists, the feds can do all the work. Portland can shove it up their exhaust pipes. Again, the Trump administration investigated Antifa for 4 years. That's a hell of a long time for domestic terrorists. Did you know that Saddam Hussein's agents worked with American leftist protest groups? Quote, many of the people and groups that Iraqi Baathists worked with outside Iraq were not necessarily pro-Saddam or pro-Iraq. They were simply against the war on Iraq, or later in the 1990s, against international sanctions. This was the case with various leftists in the West. As such, the Ba'ath Party often operated covertly and through cover organizations. Baathists working on behalf of the regime presented themselves simply as Iraqis, concerned about the suffering of their friends and families in their home country. In doing so, they were able to bring together disparate groups of peace activists, Islamists, leftists, academics, Arab nationalists, as well as mainstream politicians and members of the media. William Barr said that Antifa's violence is domestic terrorism, but he didn't say that Antifa are domestic terrorists. You may not know that Al-Qaeda means the base. It's structured like Antifa, loosely knit groups. But the U.S. has had 20 years to figure out how to deal with such organizations. Antifa in the U.S. is stupid. They had no idea that everything they touched left behind their DNA. They had no idea that nanodrones exist. William Barr confirmed what I said last night. Quote, it is the responsibility of state and local leaders to ensure that adequate law enforcement resources, including the National Guard where necessary, are deployed on the streets to reestablish law and order. We saw this happen in Minneapolis last night, and it worked. End quote. Just a few hours earlier, the governor said that they didn't have enough people in the whole state. And then suddenly, there were enough people. All the professional arsonists were stopped. They disappeared. No arrest reports. The governor gave permission for the Green Berets to go in and take out the people doing the most damage. This will never be confirmed. People now think that clandestine operations are announced beforehand. What's your evidence? They asked me. The results. Duh. As usual, nobody knows how anything works. Quote, President Donald Trump tweeted Sunday that the United States will designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, even though the U.S. government has no existing legal authority to label a wholly domestic group in the manner it currently designates as foreign terrorist organizations. That was from CNN. Antifa is not a wholly domestic group. How could CNN and the ACLU not know this? It's an international group. In Berkeley, Antifa are chanting in Italian, antifascista. On the left, holding the vegan lasagna, link in the description, check it out, is the guy who the feds unmasked and goaded into attacking so that they could harvest his DNA. He's the one who told them to pull up their masks because of the cameras on top of the buildings. Trump and Barr know all the pitfalls of designating American Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. But if they designate the entire global organization as an international terrorist group, that's all she wrote. The ACLU and Congress can't do a thing. Now, that would be in keeping with Trump and Barr's fearlessness. And it would shock the absolute hell out of all of the experts talking about American Antifa.